Hi, this is Jim Gibson. Thank you for coming today to my channel. Very much appreciate it. And my channel is about business. It's basically small business, but all businesses. It's about personal finance, and it's also about real estate. Now, just to give you a background in these things is that I've run a number of businesses, and they've all been in the black. I never declared bankruptcy or other type of excuses for not succeeding. But I've been in business for over 30 years and running a high-tech business in a very competitive market and been very successful in that area. In fact, my business, we installed systems, IT systems all over the United States, in every single state and every single year. So we went national and was very successful in that area, had a handful, more than a handful of employees, and I had well over 100 contractors that contracted with my company. So today, we're going to talk about how to go out of business quickly. Now, I didn't go out of business, but these are things that I saw in business that I have sometimes made mistakes in also in business. So I'm just giving you my background, my concerns, what I've experienced. I have a friend, he's been in business for 30, 40 years also, and I often talk to him, and sometimes he'll give me advice. I'll ask him a question, how would you handle this situation or that situation? And he would say to me, this is what I would do, this is why I would do it that way. And I would say, gosh, that is brilliant, thank you, you're giving me some really good information. And I said, I really appreciate that. And then he'd turn around and say, no, it's not wise information I'm giving you. It's called scar tissue. And I'd say, what do you mean about scar tissue? He says, I've made these mistakes and I've learned from my mistakes. So this is nothing more than scar tissue. And so what I'm teaching you today, what I'm going to be talking about, this is scar tissue. A lot of it's scar tissue. Most of it's scar tissue. Anyway. 6 things you need to be aware of when you're running a business that can quickly put you out of business. First thing is hiring poorly. Yes, I have hired poorly. And one of the things you have to do is, or you should never do, is hire friends. Don't hire friends. If you got friends, great. Keep them as friends. If for some bizarre reason you want to hire a friend from college or your neighbor down the street or something like that, you got to remember that you have to be able to treat them first as an employee, then secondly as a friend. And it's the same thing with with family members. They're first employees, then they're family members. Now that can be really tough. Now I hired my kids and they didn't, sometimes they didn't perform, and a couple times they needed to be fired, and I did. I fired them. I said, you know something, it's not working here. You need to get a job at Walmart or somewhere else, but not here. Now, I'm not talking about being lightly in firing someone. I'm just saying that it's best if you don't hire family, and please never hire a friend. Just don't do it. You're going to lose your friendship, and you're going to have problems, and it's going to hang around with you for a long time. Next thing is, don't hire anyone without a really good background check. And I have failed in this. I have hired people, they sounded good and everything else, and sometimes, you call up their former employee and the employer, and you say, how is this person? And they'll turn around and say, well, he's okay, or she's okay, but we really don't give out references. And there's a reason for that, and someday we'll go into that companies don't want to give out references because they're held accountable for those references, things like that. I often ask them, I say, well, I understand, because that's our policy also. We don't do references. However, if you were me, would you hire this person again? And they usually whisper in the phone, no, I don't think I'd hire them again. So take heed and look at the background check. Make sure you're not hiring someone that's going to steal from you, things like that, because there's a lot of people out there that are just kleptomania going on. Anyway, next is overqualified. This is all under hiring poorly. overqualified. I had a surgeon, a medical surgeon, come into my office and asked me to, asked me for a job. And what am I going to do? Put this guy that has, zillion years of training in the medical field, cabling and a ceiling? And why would I do that? He has no expertise in IT. So, I treated him, I always treat everybody with respect. So I just said, no, sir, I can't use you in this area. And, at the same time, I'm sure he was frustrated with the medical profession. And because of that, he was looking for an out. And I'm not here to solve that type of problem. So I hope he found a really great job. Now, there's other people who are severely underqualified. Now, I would hire people who knew nothing about IT because I would say, is this person worth my time as investing in them to learn IT? So underqualified, you got to pay attention to that. If you got someone who cannot learn or has an attitude that they don't think they should learn, then that's the person you do not want to hire. I always hire people based on a meritocracy, not wokeness. I hear a lot of people say, well, you need to be woke, or you need to do this, or, Disney is an example of that, I guess. And I always hear that phrase, go woke, go broke. You're not here to hire activists of any type of activists, okay? If someone is an activist, you don't want them as an employee. And the reason why is they're going to perpetrate their activeness throughout your company and with your customers and with your vendors and things like that. You want them to be activists for your company and your company only. Now, a lot of people will, I'm sure, are thinking, listening to this, well, that sounds a little cruel, and everything else. No, it's not cruel. I looked out one time, someone asked me a question about the composure of my employees, and I was just talking to them, and as I'm talking to them, I'm looking at a group of my employees, and there's blacks, there's Hispanic, I have Asians, backgrounds in all these areas. I didn't hire them because they're black or Asian or Hispanic or anything else. I hired them because they were highly qualified in the area that I needed them. I hired based on meritocracy. And that's what you need to hire based on. It's either, are you going to be involved in politics, or are you going to run a business and be successful at running a business? And you know something? I had great employees. We never even talked about these issues with my employees. They weren't interested in, any type of social issues. They were interested in doing their job and going home at night. If they were salesmen, they were interested in presenting my company in a positive light. They didn't spend any time on their politics or anything else when it came to talking to vendors or customers or other employees. So my life was easy in this area. Just hire people who have the qualifications for the job that you need done. And irrespective of any type of social background, you just need to hire the right people, period. You're not out to change the world, man. You're here to run a business and run it profitably. Now, number two, the thing you need to stay away from at all cost is partnerships. Please save yourself a headache. Do not go into a partnership with anybody. And I think of two examples on this. I know a Microsoft dealer, oh gosh, man, it must have been 20 years ago. He was really a great guy. And he owned a Microsoft Microsoft dealership. And in this deal, and I worked for him, and we worked for him. We did all his cabling for his customers. He paid on time. He was fantastic and everything else, and I liked working for him. And so he hired somebody to help him. And after about 6 months or so, he's having some difficulties with money. And this employee said, how about if I buy a percentage of the company? And I know someone else would be willing to kick in some money. So they all got together, And each person had 1/3 of the company, and then the two individuals, outside individuals, joined together, and they pretty much kicked him out. And I talked to him one time. I said, I'd much rather deal with you than these other people that have taken over your business. They're really horrible to deal with as working for them as a vendor. And he said, yep, there's not much I can do about it. I made a big mistake. And of course, the same thing, I was a Toshiba dealership person, and the other situation was there was another Toshiba dealership up in LA, and the guy was doing a fantastic job. And he was a one-man shop when he started, but he decided, excuse me, he decided to bring in a big person who had a lot of experience running another business, things like that, and bring him in as a partner. And he did the same thing. He kicked out the smaller partner, the guy who started the business, who hired people, who had customers and everything else, was actually pushed out of his business. Don't start a business with a partnership. In my whole time of dealing with over 6,000 customers, and I personally have observed partnerships, and rarely do they work out well. The only partnership that I ever say worked out well was two brothers up in LA who own a Toshiba dealership. Used to own a Toshiba dealership. Toshiba doesn't sell business systems anymore, but they owned a Toshiba dealership, and they were fantastic together. And I don't know, that's the exception. So generally the rule is partners will put you out of business. Stay away from partnership. Now, number 3, keeping employees past their due date. When you sit there and you get a gallon of milk or something, and you open it up to make your cereal in the morning, and whoa, it stinks, and you just dump it down the drain. And I know I'm going to get some comments on that, but there's sometimes you need to get rid of employees. And I've noticed that there's some employees that you're dealing with, and all of a sudden their attitude goes sour, or they don't want to learn anything new, or they're showing up to work late, or they're showing up to work with alcohol in their breath, things like that. And man, I would invest. It would take, if I took someone who didn't know IT, particularly telephone systems, things like that, it would take an investment on my part. So I would have to train them. I'd have to send them to school. I would have to make sure they had tools. I would have to do all those things to make them ready to go to a customer and make them profitable. And in some cases, because they were still learning, they would make mistakes that the customer would call us back and we'd have to repair or change because of the fact that my employee did not know all the details or did not understand the details and did something that the customer did not want, so we had to make it right. So you invest a lot in an employee like that, a lot of training, I'm giving this person a career. And so when they're starting to screw up on a regular basis, and they're doing it, I wouldn't say on purpose, but because they're lazy sometimes, or because they're thieves, they steal from you, I would just try to make them better, rehab them, per se. Why are you late all the time? Why are you this? Why is it taking so long? At one point that you need to let this person go. Now, unless someone actually does something major, like steals from you, then I always believe that you should give them a chance to turn things around. And it should not be a surprise that you're letting them go, that you're going to be firing them. And you don't have to be rude when firing them. You just say, here's your check, gave you 2 extra weeks. Hope you have a wonderful life. Thank you for your time here. And we need to part ways. You don't need to be nasty. If you have an emotional buildup inside and you just want to get your point across, that's not good. That's going to come back and bite you. Don't do that. And in California, you don't want to say why. Because then you go to court. And then there's a lot of issues. So just say, I'm sorry. It just didn't work out for us. You don't have to say that. Just say thank you and your service is no longer needed. Have a great day. But it shouldn't be, in my opinion, it shouldn't be a surprise. unless it's severe. Again, someone stealing from you, someone hurting customers or causing problems at customer sites or other employees. So don't keep employees past their due date. If they need to go, they need to go. And number 4, pay your bills on time. I always ran my business, and you need to do the same thing, in my opinion. This is all opinion anyway. But in my opinion, you need to pay your bills on time. And what I did is I always made sure I had at least 3 months worth of resources in the bank. So I know people paid me all the time and everything else, but sometimes when you go into a recession, things like that, it's a shock to the system. So you have to make sure you have enough funds in the bank to help you through that shock to the system. So I always kept extra in there. And so I would always make sure, obviously, that my employees were taken care of. And sometimes my employees had serious family issues or something like that, and I'm not going to cut them short, so I had to have an extra resources in the system to take care of my employees, especially the good ones, but also enough resources to pay my vendors. So what I would do at vendors, if I had a system, let's say, that was going in Salt Lake City, Utah, and I knew the vendor out there, and I would assign him the work that needs to be done, make sure he has all the equipment that he needs, everything else, and he had a procedure list, he knew exactly what needed to be done. And most of my vendors who were not employees knew exactly what needed to be done, and worked with me for other installs, so knew exactly what needed to be done. Now, I would pay my vendors as soon as I'm sure that the work was done, and that was it. I'm not going to hold on to the money. So if, in the first of the month they did the install and they sent me an invoice, and excuse me, and I received that invoice, let's say, on the 10th of the month, well, I'd pay them on the 11th. Why would I hold on to it? Now, I remember being subcontracted for other companies, and I would turn in my invoice, or my company would turn an invoice into that company that was somewhere else in the country, and I just installed something in Southern California for them. And then they would come back to me, and after 30 days, I would say, "Where's the money? I gave you 30 days, where's the money?" And they would say to me, "Well, the customer hasn't paid me yet." I said, "Well, that's not the deal. I don't know if your customer's ever going to pay you. I'm working for you. I'm not working for your customer." And in some cases, I actually said, after 2 or 3 months, I said, "Okay, you haven't paid me. I am going to go to your customer and ask for payment." And you can do that in California if you're a licensed contractor. You can go directly to where you did the work and ask for your money. And rarely did I have to do that. Most of the people I worked for I already knew, and I knew they were going to pay me irrespective of their customers paying them. And that's the way you need to treat your vendors. You pay them as soon as you can. You don't wait 30 days. Why wait 30 days? If you know that the work is done, why not just pay them? You have the resources. Remember, I kept 3 months worth of resources. Just pay them. And you know what happens? Those vendors start trusting you, and they're going to put your work ahead of other work that they have, or they're going to make sure they hit that deadline, because they know as soon as they submit that invoice that a check will be cut within 48 hours, 2 business days, 3 business days at the most. I had a bookkeeper one time, and all of a sudden my registrations were late for my trucks. And I went to her, and I would say, "Well, what's going on?" And she said, "Well, when I get an invoice, I stick it in a file, and I pay it 30 days past due." Well, 30 days past due with the government means you have to pay a fine for your registration in California. And on top of that, 30 days past due with a credit card means you have to pay a fine. And so I said, "Don't do that. pay as soon as I approve an invoice, as soon as the invoice is approved, you cut a check within 24 hours. And I said, and we're going to pay all our registrations on the truck ahead of time. I'm not interested in floating money. That's what it's called, floating money. You don't pay your bills to the last minute, and then you pay them 30 days after they're due, and you float all this money. Well, you're not making any money in the bank, in the checking account. It's just not going to happen. So don't float people. It creates ill feelings towards your company, and at the same time, when you need those vendors that you really need to pay, they're not going to be there for you, okay? They may not even work for you. I remember one guy, I worked for a Microsoft dealer, again, doing cabling and stuff like that, and I noticed he got a little bit behind on his payments. So I called him up and I said, hey, I noticed you're a little behind. Is there a possibility I could come and pick up a check? And he said, yeah, I know I'm behind. Could you come Monday morning? And I said, sure. And so Monday morning I showed up at his office, and the office was locked. And it was like 9, 10 o'clock in the morning, whatever it was. And I called him up. He goes, yeah, I'm still at my house. Is it possible you can come to my house? And I said, sure. It wasn't that far away. I'm getting a little annoyed because this is taking up time, and time is valuable when you're in business. So I went to his house and I knocked on the door, and he came out in his pajamas. He said, Jim, I got some bad news for you. And I said, what's that bad news? And he said, I had your money on Friday, but I went to Vegas, man, and I lost big time. And I have just enough money to run my business. I can't pay you right now, but I'll pay you soon. Yeah, well, eventually I got paid, but that was the last job I ever done for him. So if you treat vendors like that the vendors are going to turn around and say, nope, I'm not interested in it. I had to take 5, 6 hours of calling you and visiting you and making time in my day to pick up a check that should have been in the mail 2 days after I sent you the invoice. So treat your vendors nice, pay them ahead of time. They'll love you for it and they'll work hard for you. Take care of your employees. Never, never, never miss a payroll when it comes to your employees. Treat them with respect. Take care of your employees and your vendors. Not all employees are bad. Sometimes you start pulling out your hair. Some of the crazy things that employees do. But don't concentrate and don't focus on that. That's been my biggest problem, I think, in life, is I've always focused on the crazy part of employees. And sometimes it's really crazy. Maybe I'll do a video on that, all the crazy stuff that has happened. Number 5, you stop learning. You can never stop learning. Some people that go to college and they get a master's degree in business administration. Yeah, that's me. But it doesn't mean your learning stops at that point. It doesn't mean your education stops the day you graduate. It just begun. The real life is a better teacher than what you learn in class. So your education starts then. I'm always reading books, especially on areas of business. It's just me. I do not like fiction, except, I'll watch it on TV, obviously. I sit down, some popcorn and watch a good movie. That's fine, but I'm not going to spend my time with a fiction book, when I could be learning something that's practical for business or for the industry that I'm in. And yes, I am working right now on, M.J. DeMarco's book, Fast Lane to Riches or something like that. And it's probably the second time I've listened to it. It's an excellent book. I'll probably do a book review on this in the future. But I'm always learning. I'm working on my AWS certifications. I'm working on updating my CCNA. So these things, if you're not in my industry, are important certifications for my industry. And I would go to employees sometimes, and they would come to me or whatever. We would be talking, and they'd say, Jim, can I get a raise? I say, yes, please, thank you for asking for a raise. I'd love to give you a raise. And remember, and employees are asking for a raise. That means they want to stay. That means they like your company, they're interested in what they're doing, everything else. So this is a good thing when employees ask for a raise. And I'd say, absolutely, man, I give you a raise. And then I would say, but I need to move you to the next level. So what I'll do is I'll buy that certification book for you. And if you take the test and pass it, I will give you an X amount of dollars. Just put that in writing, okay? Just so you know, and neither of us assume something different. I'll put that in writing, that if you pass this certification, and then I'd have people say, well, I don't need certifications. Why? I know this stuff, and it's silly to get a certification. It's not silly because customers require it. So when our salesman goes in and says, all our employees that are working on your IT system are certified by the manufacturer, the Cisco or Amazon Web Services, they're certified in these areas, and that gives you credibility. So I don't like this stuff where people would say, well, I got the experience, I don't need the certification. Well, if you have the experience, get the darn certification. It should be an easy job then. Here's the book, I paid for it, $60, $70, $80, here it is. Take it, learn the subject, take the test, and I'll pay for the test. Very few people took me up on that, by the way. Very, very few people took me up on it. So if I needed someone that was a CCNA, and I needed another one, and I offered it to a couple of employees 3 months ago, and they didn't do anything, I just hired the CCNA. I didn't need them now. So think it through like that as an owner. If you want to help your employees learn, but you should be learning also. So not only did I require my employees, some of them who were in that division of my company, the networking division, to be Cisco certified CCNA, but then I went and got certified, so I know what's involved, what's going on, and you need to learn. So if you stop learning, you're losing. You're going to lose eventually. It will build up, and you won't have the confidence in your product. You won't have the confidence in your employees because you don't know what they're doing, and you don't know how to do it yourself. So you should be able to do it yourself. Now, that's a high level to reach, but you should be learning every single day. Something new. I always like the books, Books on Tape, and I forget the name of the darn program that Amazon offers. Man, I must have 30, 40 books on there, all about business. I just love to listen to business to do better. I'm flying in an airplane, I'm listening to the book sometimes over and over and over again, because there's always someone out there that has run into the problem that you're facing. And if you think you got it all down, you don't. And so it's always good to hear someone else, how they solved a particular problem and how they solved it in business. And it's an excellent learning device, is books on tape. Now, when it comes to technical things, I got to have it in writing. I had, Edu Comedy or something. It's not comedy. But, there's some training videos out there, CBT nuggets, and YouTube that can also help you when it comes to learning technical stuff. Lastly, I just want to make sure this is lastly. Yep, is number 6. If you don't pay attention to number 6, you guarantee that eventually you will go out of business. And it is pay attention to your business. And when it comes to the market and your business model, your customers, your vendors, your employees, be involved. Pay attention to what they're doing and how they're doing it, and how the customers are perceiving them. What is your business model? This is something that got ahead of me in business a couple of times, and I look at it, and now I have a phrase that I use, and that is everything changes all the time. You got to pay attention to the condition of your business, and is it growing, is it shrinking? You should know what your profit was last week, last month, last year, And are you going up or are you going down? Now, it's kind of interesting. There's, in the Bible, Proverbs, and if you're not studying Proverbs, that's another thing you should be studying as a business owner. There's a ton of business advice. Yeah, and these old shepherds actually had a lot of things right. And one of them is Proverbs 27:23. It says, "Be sure you know the condition of your flocks. Give careful attention to your herds. For riches do not endure forever, and a crown is not secure for all generations." So you think you hit it? You think your business is growing and everything else? Pay attention. Pay attention here. And you know, these old shepherds, you say, well, you know, they're just back end of the desert shepherds and everything else. No, these were businessmen. And there's a lot of business principles that have endured thousands of years. And you may not have learned them in business, you know, getting your master's in business administration. I didn't learn this in business administration. I learned how to calculate my taxes. Well, I pay a CPA now to calculate my taxes. I don't need to worry about that. I got a concept of how it's done, and I know about taxes, but I pay someone else. Or other things that you learned in, you know, master's program for MBA. That used to be a big thing when I went for it. Everyone needed an MBA. And I'm thankful to the Marine Corps, they paid for it. Thank you, Marine Corps. But I learned a lot of other principles in life, and a lot of the interesting stuff I learned was right there in Proverbs and in the Bible. So you should check it out. You know, don't think you're better. Oh, I don't listen to that. That's just religious stuff. There's a lot of good stuff in there that can really help you. So there are the 6 things. If you don't pay attention, you know, hiring poorly, partnerships, keeping employees past their due date, not paying your bills on time, stop learning and not paying attention to the market, your business model, and we can talk about business model in the future, customers, employees, and vendors. If you don't pay attention to those people, you're going to be in trouble. So thank you for your time. I very much appreciate it. Please give me a thumbs up. If this has been valuable to you, please give me a thumbs up. And also subscribe. Subscribe and give me a thumbs up means that the algorithm will offer this video more frequently, and therefore my site will grow. So if you appreciate these videos that I'm giving you, then realize that the way you could pay me back is by subscribing. And I hope you have a wonderful day.